The sky above Vega Prime was not a sky anymore, it was a war. Burning wreckage floated like dying fireflies, the remains of human ships that had fought until their hulls cracked apart. Alien warships blotted out the stars, their sharp, metallic shapes cutting through the darkness like knives. The planet below was a jewel of blue and green, but its beauty was drowned by the black swarm closing in. Every soldier on the surface, and every pilot in orbit knew the same truth. Vega Prime was humanity's last wall. If it fell, there would be nothing left to protect the inner colonies. On the bridge of the carrier Atlas, Captain Rourke stood like a man carved from stone. He had been in the Navy for 25 years, had seen battles that turned his hair gray long before its time, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The alien coalition had brought ships from 3 different species, united under one goalie race, humanity from existence. Rourke's crew worked frantically at their stations, their voices tense, their eyes avoiding the red casualty counters, flashing on the screens. Every few seconds, a friendly ship icon vanished from the tactical map. "Captain," his communications officer said, her voice trembling, "we've just received a priority transmission. Encryption level Omega." That was a level Rourke hadn't heard in years, an emergency code used only for the most secret orders. The officer handed him the datapad. On it, 3 words pulsed in deep red letters: "Activate Project Leviathan." Rourke's stomach tightened. He had heard whispers of Leviathan back in his early years, a classified black project so buried in military secrecy that most officers thought it was just a myth. The rumors had been strange, something about a ship unlike any ever built, a weapon powerful enough to change the course of a war, but the official records were wiped clean, and no one ever admitted it existed. Before he could ask for details, the alien fleet shifted. The movement was subtle, but Rourke saw it. Their massive ships were holding position. Their weapons locked on Atlas, yet they didn't fire. "Why have they stopped?" his first officer whispered. The enemy's hesitation was unnerving. Was as if they sensed what the humans were about to awaken. Rourke opened a secure channel to Admiral Serrano, commander of the entire Vega defense fleet. The older man appeared on the screen, his uniform scorched, the bridge behind him filled with smoke. "You got the order too," Serrano said, his voice low, urgent. "Leviathan is real. It's hidden inside the Xyrian Nebula. You're the only one close enough to reach it. Get there now." "But Sir, Vega will fall without it," Serrano interrupted. "We can't hold this line. Need Leviathan, Rourke, at any cost." The screen cut to black before Rourke could reply. The Atlas's engines roared as the crew obeyed his command to break formation. Human ships nearby turned in confusion as the carrier veered away from the defensive line, diving toward open space. Alien vessels tracked them instantly, a few peeling off from the main formation to pursue. Rourke ordered a blind jump, dangerous, but necessary, straight into the chaotic storms of the Xyrian Nebula. The moment they entered, the universe changed. The stars outside vanished, replaced by swirling clouds of gold and crimson gas that twisted in slow, eerie motion. Electrical discharges lit up the mists like silent lightning, illuminating strange shapes far away. Inside the nebula, scanners failed, communications turned to static, and even the Atlas's lights seemed to dim. It was as if the ship had entered another world. The nebula was death to most ships. Alien fleets avoided it. Yet Rourke pushed forward, guided only by half-forgotten coordinates buried deep in the carrier's archives. The deeper they went, the heavier the silence felt. Even the crew spoke in whispers, as though afraid the nebula itself might hear them. Then they saw it, at first. It looked like a mountain drifting through the clouds. As the mists parted, its shape became clearer. Ship, colossal beyond belief, larger than any space station Rourke had ever seen. Its dark hull stretched for miles, bristling with weapon ports and hangar bays big enough to swallow battleships. Whole, but it was not dead. Here and there, faint lines of blue light pulsed across its surface, like veins beneath the skin of some sleeping giant. The Atlas slowed, drifting closer. Strange markings were etched into the hull, symbols that were not human, glowing faintly like embers in the dark. The ship looked ancient, yet untouched by time. "That's it," whispered the navigator. "That's Leviathan. It's the moment." The Atlas reached a certain distance. Every system on the bridge flickered. Lights dimmed, controls froze, and the crew's headsets filled with a faint static that almost sounded like a voice. Then the alien runes on Leviathan's surface flared brighter, as if the ship had recognized them. "Captain," the communications officer said, her eyes wide. It's hailing us." Rourke stared at the massive shape in the mist. No human ship had been here in decades, yet Leviathan was awakened. It was calling to them. It felt the weight of every life in the Vega system pressing on his next choice. The enemy was out there, waiting, watching. If Leviathan was the weapon they claimed, it could save humanity. If it wasn't, they were flying into their own grave. "Answer it," Rourke said. The bridge speakers crackled. And then, in a voice deep and resonant like the echo of a mountain, speaking, the ship said, "I have been waiting." The crew froze. The alien fleet outside the nebula began to move again, their ships vanishing into the clouds in pursuit. Time was running out. Rourke's pulse thundered in his ears as he stepped toward the comms console. This was no ordinary vessel. It felt alive. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The voice lingered in the air long after it spoke, heavy and cold, as if the very walls of the Atlas were vibrating from its echo. The crew looked at each other in stunned silence, their faces pale in the dim light of the nebula. No one dared speak at first, because the truth was too strange to process. A ship, older than any human colony, floating abandoned in a dead zone of space, had just spoken to them. Captain Rourke's jaw tightened. This was not a pre-recorded distress signal. This was a reply, conscious one. Outside the Atlas, the massive silhouette of Leviathan loomed like a slumbering god in the mist. The alien runes carved into its hull continued to pulse with a deep, steady rhythm, as though the ship had a heartbeat. Every few seconds, faint arcs of blue lightning danced along its surface, flashing through its weapon ports before vanishing again. There was something hypnotic about it, something that made Rourke feel as if the ship was studying them in return. "Captain," Lieutenant Hale said quietly from the weapons station, "I'm picking up something strange. The ship's energy signature, it's not like anything in our database. It's not human, but it's not matching any known alien species either." He hesitated, then added, "It's stronger than anything I've ever seen." Rourke stepped closer to the central holodisplay, staring at the readings. The numbers didn't make sense. The Leviathan was powered by a core so dense, the Atlas's sensors couldn't calculate its full output. If the readings were even half true, this single ship could wipe out fleets in minutes. The voice came again, deep and resonant. "Human vessel, you have come." At last, the comms officer swallowed hard. "It's using our language now. That's impossible. We've never made contact with whatever built this." Rourke keyed the mic. "This is Captain Elias Rourke of the United Earth Navy. We're here under it's Directive Omega. We were told you can help us fight the enemy outside this nebula." For a long moment, there was nothing but the soft hiss of static. Then "The enemy is not new. I have destroyed them before. I will destroy them again, but you must awaken me." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Awaken?" Hale repeated under his breath. Before Rourke could respond, alarms blared across the Atlas. The tactical officer's voice was sharp and urgent. "Captain, incoming contacts. Multiple alien ships have entered the nebula. Pursuers from Vega Prime." The mist outside began to ripple as massive shadows moved through its leak. Angular vessels belonging to the Zalith war clan, their hulls glinting faintly in the lightning storms. They were hunting the Atlas, their formations tightening weapons. Charging, Rourke's mind raced. The Atlas couldn't fight in here not without navigational systems fully functional. The nebula's interference crippled their targeting, and the enemy's ships were built to hunt in low-visibility environments. But Leviathan, if it was truly what the legends whispered, it could turn the tide. "Leviathan," Rourke said into the mic, "how do we awaken you?" The voice replied, "A key lies within your vessel. You have carried it for years without knowing." The crew stared in confusion. A key on the Atlas? Before they could question it, the Atlas shuddered violently. An energy beam from the lead Zalith cruiser had sliced across their shields, forcing the tactical officer to report shields at 68%. The crew scrambled to return fire, but the nebula's interference made their shots go wide. More alien ships emerged from the swirling mists, cutting off escape routes. The enemy was closing in, moving like predators herding prey. The voice spoke again, sharper this time. "Your time is almost gone. Find the key." Rourke turned to Commander Vega, his first officer. "Search the archives. Look for anything cargo, classified equipment linked to the Leviathan project." The ship's AI joined the search, flickering through decades of mission logs, transport manifests, and sealed data. Then, almost impossibly, it found something, a small, forgotten crate stored deep in the lower decks, labeled under a false registry number. The AI displayed the note attached to it: "Property of Project Leviathan. Do not open." "Bring it to me," Rourke ordered. 2 crew members raced to retrieve the crate. It arrived moments later, a simple black container no larger than a suitcase, its surface marked with the same alien runes etched on Leviathan's hull. When Rourke touched it, the runes lit up, sending a shiver through his hand. The crate clicked open on its own, revealing a crystal-like sphere suspended in a field of blue energy. It pulsed slowly, in perfect sync with the Leviathan's heartbeat, like glow outside. "That's it," Rourke said. "Get it to the docking bay. We're going aboard." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Docking with an unknown alien warship in the middle of a battle wasn't exactly regulation, but Rourke didn't care. The Zalith ships were closing fast, and the Atlas was running out of time. The carrier maneuvered closer to Leviathan, its massive form swallowing them in shadow. As the Atlas approached, a portion of the Leviathan's hull seemed to peel open like a living creature making way for them. A docking corridor extended outward, smooth, metallic, and eerily silent. "Captain," the navigator said, "I think it's inviting us in." Rourke led the boarding team, carrying the sphere himself. The moment they stepped onto the Leviathan, they felt the difference. The air inside was cold and metallic, yet breathable. The walls glowed faintly with flowing streams of blue light like veins under glass. The corridors were vast, built for something far larger than humans. They reached what could only be the bridge, a cavernous chamber with a single throne-like chair at its center, surrounded by floating displays of alien design. Rourke approached the central console, where a socket the exact size of the sphere waited. He placed the sphere inside. The entire ship shuddered, as if it had taken its first breath in centuries. Lights blazed to life, the walls vibrated with deep energy, and the voice boomed, "Leviathan is awake." Outside, the alien pursuers slowed. For the first time, the hunters looked uncertain. And then, with a low hum that grew into a roar, Leviathan's weapons began to glow. The war was about to change. The moment the sphere locked into place, the Leviathan seemed to come alive in a way that made the Atlas feel like a child's toy by comparison. Every surface on the alien ship rippled with light as if liquid fire was racing through its veins. The deep, heartbeat-like thrum that had echoed faintly before now roared like an endless drum, shaking the very air in the chamber. The human boarding team stood frozen, their eyes wide, unable to decide whether they had just saved themselves or doomed all of humanity. Outside, the Zalith warships hesitated, their sleek silhouettes cutting through the swirling nebula like predatory shadows. Their leaders had hunted humans across dozens of star systems, confident in their superiority. But now, for the first time, their formation wavered. It was as if they could sense the change, like prey suddenly realizing the wounded animal they were circling was no longer helpless. Captain Commander Vega whispered, her voice low but trembling with awe. "Do you feel that?" Rourke nodded without speaking. Could feel it not just in the soles of his boots but in his bones. The Leviathan's presence was more than mechanical. It was almost alive, aware, ancient, and far more intelligent than any ship built by human hands. He had seen warships before. He had commanded some of the most powerful vessels in the United Earth Navy, but nothing had ever radiated this kind of raw, primal authority. The alien voice returned, but now it was clearer, sharper, and carried an edge of power that made the air vibrate. Human, you have awakened me. You have earned my weapons. Now, point me toward your enemy. Before Rourke could answer, the Leviathan acted on its own. Across its vast hull, massive panels split open, revealing weapon systems that looked impossibly advanced. Some resembled rail cannons scaled to monstrous proportions. Others were weapons no human mind could name, shimmering with an energy so dense it warped the light around it. The ship's targeting systems locked onto the incoming Zalith fleet with surgical precision. Even through the nebula's interference, something human tech could never manage. The Zalith reacted instantly. They broke formation, their engines flaring as they attempted evasive maneuvers. But it was already too late. The Leviathan fired. The first blast wasn't light. It was darkness, a pulse that seemed to swallow the nebula's glow. The energy wave tore through the nearest enemy cruiser, and for a heartbeat, the ship seemed to exist in two places at once before it folded in on itself and vanished entirely, leaving only a faint ripple in the mist. The second shot was brighter, a spear of energy so focused it passed clean through to enemy ships, detonating both in a silent explosion of light and vapor. The boarding team on the Leviathan's bridge watched in stunned silence as a third weapon activated a swirling sphere of compressed plasma that launched slowly, almost lazily, toward the center of the enemy formation. The Zalith tried to scatter, but the sphere suddenly exploded into a storm of smaller projectiles, each one homing in on a target. Within seconds, half the enemy fleet was crippled or destroyed. On the Atlas, the crew erupted into cheers. For weeks they had been running from the Zalith, losing battles, losing friends, losing hope. Now they were watching the impossible, an ancient warship wiping out their most feared enemy like they were nothing more than insects. But Rourke didn't cheer. His eyes were locked on the Leviathan's tactical displays, and he saw something the others didn't. The Leviathan wasn't just fighting, it was learning. With each shot, its targeting algorithms adapted. With each kill, its weapon systems calibrated faster. It was evolving in real time, becoming more deadly by the second. "Captain Rourke," the voice said, now speaking his name with unsettling precision, "your enemy bleeds easily, but this is only the beginning. The Zalith you see are hunters. Their masters are coming." The words sent a chill down his spine. If the Zalith were merely hunters, then whatever commanded them had to be something far worse. He had no idea how much time they had before these so-called masters arrived. But he already knew one thing: without the Leviathan, humanity wouldn't survive the first hour of that battle. The Atlas re-established docking clamps and began transferring tactical data to the Leviathan. The alien ship accepted it without hesitation, integrating human fleet maps into its own navigation systems. To Rourke's surprise, Leviathan's interface displayed not just locations of human colonies, but also places no human had ever charted, deep within regions of space marked only as dark zones in Navy records. "Captain," Vega said softly, pointing to one such zone. "This one. It's right near Earth." Before Rourke could respond, the Leviathan interrupted. "Your home is already marked. They will come for it next. If you want to save it, you will follow me." The Zalith survivors regrouped in the distance, their remaining ships circling like vultures, clearly calling for reinforcements. The nebula shimmered with strange, faint pulses, as if something massive was moving just beyond sight. And for the first time, Rourke wondered if waking the Leviathan had truly been their choice, or if they'd only played into the hands of something far older and far more dangerous than the Zalith. The Leviathan's engines roared to life. The deck beneath their feet trembled, and in a voice that sounded almost eager, it said, "We hunt." The Leviathan cut through space like a living blade, its colossal frame moving with impossible grace. To the crew of the Atlas, it felt as though they were no longer flying through space. They were being pulled into it, drawn toward some unseen destination that only the Leviathan could sense. The starfield outside the viewport began to thin, giving way to a strange, oppressive darkness. It wasn't the normal void between stars. This was heavier, as if the very light hesitated to enter. "This is the dark zone?" Commander Vega asked, her voice low. She stared at the black expanse ahead, where distant stars seemed dimmer. Smothered under a veil of shadow, the Leviathan's voice answered, steady and ancient. This is where your enemy was born. This is where they prepare for the end of all things. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had fought the Zalith before, had watched them slaughter colonies without mercy. But the thought that they were merely the offspring of something greater, that chilled them in a way no battle ever had, as they pushed deeper. Strange readings began to appear on the sensors. Objects flickered on the displays. Here for a second, gone the next, as though they were being watched from hundreds of angles at once. The nebulate clouds in this region swirled unnaturally, forming shapes that almost resembled vast, drifting figures before dissolving back into mist. Every so often, faint flashes of blue-white light would ripple through the void, like lightning in an endless storm. "Captain," the Atlas science officer said, frowning at his console, "I think we're inside some kind of gravitational net. Space here isn't stable." Before Rourke could respond, the Leviathan spoke again. "It is not unstable. It is being shaped. Held, they keep it this way, to hide what lies within." And then, as if to answer its own statement, the darkness parted. What lay ahead was not a single planet or star system, it was an entire battlefield frozen in time. Hulks of ancient warships drifted silently, some larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their designs were alien, each one unique, their metal hulls scarred and burned from battles fought eons ago. Many of them bore markings the Leviathan seemed to recognize, for it slowed, its massive guns adjusting slightly, almost in reverence. This Leviathan murmured, "Was the first war I fought here, before your species had even learned. Fire." The crew of the Atlas stared, their minds struggling to comprehend the scale. Dozens no, hundreds of derelict ships hung in the void like ghosts, some still glowing faintly with dormant power. The sheer silence of the scene was suffocating, as if the dead ships themselves were watching. And then, far beyond the wreckage, a shape emerged at first. It looked like a distant moon, but as they drew closer, they realized it was moving. Slowly, impossibly, a colossal structure drifted into views, so vast it dwarfed the Leviathan itself. Its surface was jagged and black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. And its shape was wrong, as if it had been built in defiance of geometry, Vega whispered. "What is that? Their forge?" the Leviathan said. "Where they build their fleets, where they birth their hunters." The crew of the Atlas felt the air grow colder, though they knew it was impossible in the sealed bridge. Something about that forge radiated an oppressive, suffocating presence. Even from this distance, it felt as if it were looking back at them suddenly. A burst of energy erupted from the forge, in the space of a heartbeat. Hundreds of Zalith ships poured out, their sleek frames cutting through the dark like blades. But these were not the same Zalith they had fought before. These were larger, faster, and bristling with weapons so alien they seemed to bend reality around them. The Atlas tactical officer swallowed hard. "Captain, those readings, they're off the scale." "They are the Master's Guard," Leviathan said grimly. "They will not let us leave alive." The first wave of enemy ships accelerated toward them, forming a tight spearhead formation. The Leviathan's weapon systems hummed to life, the hum building into a deep vibration that resonated through the Atlas hull. But Rourke could feel something else too, something the Leviathan wasn't saying. "Leviathan," said, narrowing his eyes, "you brought us here knowing they'd come for us, didn't you?"
Ow.
The ship's pause was almost human. "To kill. The Masters, you must first wake them. And nothing wakes them faster than the smell of human defiance." The enemy formation closed in. In the shadow of the forge, the Atlas and the Leviathan prepared for a battle that could decide not just the fate of their mission, but the survival of Earth itself. The first shots lit up the darkness. The first volley struck like the fists of a god. Energy beams lanced through the darkness, cutting past the drifting wrecks of ancient warships and slamming into the Leviathan's shimmering shields. The impact shook the Atlas so hard that several crew members were thrown from their stations. Sparks rained down from ruptured conduits, and alarms wailed across the bridge, shields holding. For now. The tactical officer shouted, gripping the edge of his console. But for now wasn't going to be enough. The enemy fleet moved like a living organism, every ship adjusting its angle, speed, and trajectory in perfect unison.
They didn't.
Just attack, they heard it. The Atlas and Leviathan were being pushed, maneuvered into a narrowing pocket of space between the forge and the skeletal remains of the ancient battlefield. From the viewport, the forge loomed larger, its surface alive. With shifting plates and flowing streams of molten metal, massive, insect-like machines crawled along its exterior, carrying slabs of glowing alloy to towering assembly lines. In the distance, entire warships were being birthed and completed in minutes, not months. There, making ships. Faster than we can destroy them, whispered Lieutenant Perez, his voice tinged with disbelief. Correction. Leviathan rumbled through the coms. Faster than you can destroy them. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the supercarrier's massive dorsal cannons rotated forward. The barrels began to glow not with the golden heat of conventional weapons, but with a blinding blue light that seemed to drink the darkness. Around it, the hum of the Leviathan's power systems rose until it became a bone-deep vibration. "What are you doing?" Rock demanded, gripping the armrests of his chair. "Using a weapon forbidden even in the First War," the Leviathan replied. "If we survive, your people will know me as a savior. If we fail, they will remember me only as the spark that burned your galaxy." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The first wave of Zalithgard ships broke formation, circling around a flank. Several dived straight at the Atlas, their jagged prows spitting arcs of black lightning that shredded smaller vessels in seconds. But the Leviathan didn't move to intercept. It didn't fire its smaller guns. It simply waited, letting the enemy close in. Vega slammed a fist into the railing. "You're going to get us killed?" "No," Leviathan said. "I'm going to show them something they have not feared in millennia." Then the supercarrier fired. The blue beam wasn't just light. It was reality itself being torn apart. It carved through the enemy's spearhead like paper, erasing ships from existence rather than destroying them. The beam kept going, slicing into the forge's outer ring. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire structure shuddered. Massive chunks of armor peeled away, exposing its molten heart. A sound not possible in space seemed to rumble. Through their bones. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Perez's eyes widened. That wasn't the forge, was it? The Leviathan's voice was quieter now. No, that was the thing sleeping inside it. From the heart of the forge, something began to rise. It was too big to comprehend at first, more like a shifting shadow than a solid form. As it pulled free, the crew could see jagged limbs each. One longer than a destroyer, and a head crowned with spines that glowed faintly red. Its eyes opened, twin orbs of molten gold, and for the first time since entering the Dark Zone, Rourke felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pure animal. Fear. The Leviathan spoke again, but this time there was no confidence in its voice. "The Masters are waking." The enemy fleet, which had moments ago been closing in for the kill, now broke formation and scattered like prey before a predator. Even the Zalithgard fled, vanishing into the darkness beyond the wreckage. "Why are they running?" Vega asked. "Because they know," Leviathan said slowly, "that what is coming does not serve them. It serves nothing." The forge's molten rivers turned a deep crimson as the monstrous shape stepped free. Space around it rippled, bending as if it were trying to reject the creature's presence. The Atlas instruments went haywired. Distances became meaningless. Mass readings spiked into the impossible. Rourke stood slowly, his hands curling into fists. "If that thing gets out of the Dark Zone, it will not just reach your world," Leviathan finished. "It will consume every star in its path." The giant creature lifted its head and roared a soundless bellow that somehow carried across the void. The forge shook and more shapes began to stir within. The Masters weren't just waking. They were gathering, and the crew of the Atlas realized, with sickening clarity, that they had walked straight into the heart of an ancient nightmare. The void burned. Stars died in silence as the masters moved. Their titanic forms swam through space like living storms, limbs cutting through reality, each step tearing the fabric of the cosmos. Every ship, every station, every fragment of the ancient wreckage around Vega Prime seemed like dust compared to their scale. The Leviathan hung. Between them and the human fleets, its hull scorched, its shields flickering like the heartbeat of a dying giant. The Atlas floated just beyond its shadow, battered but unbroken. On the bridge, Captain Rourke stared at the monster that had stepped from the forge's heart. It was even larger, up close its eyes, golden and burning, locked on the Leviathan, as though recognizing an old enemy. "It knows me." Leviathan's voice rumbled through every channel at once. "And it remembers what I did to its kin." The masters didn't attack in a rush. They approached slowly, deliberately, like predators, circling prey they knew couldn't escape. Every human ship that tried to flee was crushed in moments, warped into nothingness by waves of impossible energy. Vega gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. "We can't beat them, not with your weapons," Leviathan replied. "But you built me for something more." Supercarrier's hull began to shift. Massive plates sliding open to reveal hidden structures, enormous prongs of silver, alloy extending like the bones of a giant's wings. The glow from its core intensified, flooding space with a pale white light that pushed back the shadows. Perez's console erupted with warnings. "Energy spike off the charts. Leviathan, you'll blow yourself apart. That is the point." Bridge went silent. Even Rourke felt his throat tighten. "You're talking about a self-detonation, not a detonation," Collapsed Leviathan corrected. "The First War taught me that you cannot kill a master in the normal sense. You can seal them. You can trap them in a prison of folded space. I will become that prison," Vega said sharply. "You do that, you're gone. If I do not, so is your species." The masters moved faster now, sensing the change. One lashed out, its limbs slicing toward the Leviathan with the force of a planetary strike. The supercarriers forward. Cannons unleashed another reality-tearing beam, shearing the appendage away in a burst of golden fire. But the wound healed instantly. The masters' roar shaking the hull of every ship in the fleet. "All ships form a defensive wall," Rourke barked. "By the Leviathan time." Ash! The human fleet surged forward. Fragile corvettes darted between. The master strikes. Heavy cruisers poured every ounce of fire into their glowing eyes and jagged limbs. It was suicide, and they knew it, but no one broke formation. Inside the Leviathan, vast chambers began to hum with alien machinery, some of it older than humanity itself. The light from its core grew blinding, stretching into a lattice of shimmering lines that expanded around the creature like a net. Space warped, stars twisted, and the masters roared in unison. Thrashing against the forming barrier, Rourke. Leviathan's voice came softer now, almost human. "Tell your people. We were never weak." The lattice snapped closed. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then light. Endless, searing light that erased all shadows. The forge shattered into fragments. The wreckage field around Vega Prime was flung across light years. The masters' screams faded into nothing as the barrier pulled them into the fold. When the glare faded, the Leviathan was gone. No wreckage, no signal, just the empty stars and the silent wrecks of 1,000 dead ships. On the bridge of the Atlas, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Rourke broke the silence. "Send the message to Earth. Tell them." Oh, his voice cracked, but he forced the words out. "Tell them the Leviathan kept its promise. Somewhere, far beyond human reach, in a pocket of folded space where time had no meaning." The masters raged against their prison, and at the heart of that prison, the Leviathan watched. Them, unblinking, unyielding, until the end of time.